Let me tell you something most men will never hear. You are not broken. You are not old. You're not just getting tired with age. You're sabotaging yourself every single day. With habits so normal, so accepted, so woven into your daily routine that you don't even question them anymore. And the worst part? Nobody's going to tell you this. Not your doctor, not your friends, not the fitness influencer selling you the next supplement stack. Because the truth is uncomfortable. The truth requires change. And most people would rather sell you a pill than ask you to look at your own behavior. So today, that changes. Today we are going to talk about testosterone, not the testosterone of bodybuilders and performance enhancers. The real thing. The biological signal that drives your energy, your confidence, your focus, your drive, your presence in a room. The thing that makes you feel alive versus the thing that makes you feel like you're just going through the motions. And we are going to talk about why you are destroying it yourself. Not because the world is against you, not because your genetics sealed your fate, but because of choices, repeated daily. Invisible choices that send your biology one message over and over again. The message that you are weak, that you are in survival mode, that there is no reason to produce the kind of hormonal intensity that a man operating at full capacity requires. Here's what you need to understand first. Testosterone is not a fixed number. It is not something you are born with and slowly lose like water draining from a tank. It is a response signal. It responds to your environment. It responds to your behavior. It responds to the inputs your body receives every single day. Sleep quality, physical stress, caloric balance, body fat percentage, competition, purpose, recovery. These are not abstract health concepts. These are direct inputs into your endocrine system. And your endocrine system is listening every hour, every night, every meal, every decision. When your environment signals strength, recovery, and challenge, testosterone rises to meet it. When your environment signals stagnation, overconsumption, and chronic stress without relief, testosterone drops to match that too. This is not personal. It is not punishment. It is biology doing exactly what it was designed to do. And once you understand that, the question stops being quote 1 and starts being quote 2. Let's start at the beginning, and I mean the absolute foundation. Sleep. Not sleep as a concept you respect in theory. Not sleep as the thing you plan to prioritize someday when life slows down. Real sleep. Consistent sleep. Deep sleep. Because here's what happens when you don't get it. The majority of your daily testosterone production occurs during sleep, specifically during deep sleep cycles, the kind that require darkness, stillness, and a consistent schedule. When you cut that short, when you push through on 5 or 6 hours, when you stay up until 2 in the morning watching something on a screen, you are not just tired the next day. You are hormonally depleted. Studies have shown that 1 week of sleeping 5 hours per night can reduce testosterone levels in young healthy men by 10 to 15%. 1 week. Not years of neglect. 7 days of what millions of men consider a normal schedule. Now think about what a year of that looks like. 10 years. And it is not just the hours. It is the quality. Blue light exposure before bed suppresses melatonin, disrupts your sleep architecture, reduces the time you spend in deep restorative cycles. Late nights scrolling, gaming, binge watching. These are not harmless wind-down habits. They are active interference with the most important hormonal window your body has. You don't power through sleep loss. You pay for it. Slowly, invisibly, in energy you don't have, in drive you can't locate, in a dull, persistent flatness that you eventually just accept as who you are. You are not that person. But you are choosing the habits that create that person. Fix the sleep. Not next week. Tonight. Now let's talk about stress. Because this one is more complicated, and most people get it completely wrong. Stress is not your enemy. Acute stress, the kind that comes from physical challenge, competition, difficult decisions, from pushing yourself through something hard, that kind of stress can actually support healthy testosterone levels. It signals your body that you are in the arena, that you are competing, that you need to be sharp. The enemy is chronic stress, the kind that never turns off. Overwork with no recovery, emotional rumination that runs in the background of every hour of your day, financial pressure that you carry into your sleep, relationship tension that never gets resolved, a nervous system that is permanently activated, permanently flooded with cortisol, permanently in a state of low-grade emergency. Cortisol and testosterone exist in a kind of biological competition. when cortisol stays elevated for extended periods, your body begins to deprioritize testosterone production. Because from a survival standpoint, when you are in danger, when resources are scarce, when the environment is hostile, reproduction and dominance are secondary concerns. Staying alive is the priority. Your body cannot distinguish between a predator and a deadline. It reads signals. And if your signals say danger, always danger, constant low-level danger, your hormonal profile adapts accordingly. This is not weakness. This is intelligent biology applied to a modern environment it was never designed for. But knowing this gives you power. Because it means the solution is not eliminating stress. It is building recovery into your life with the same seriousness you give to your work. Cold exposure, physical training, meditation, time in nature, genuine disconnection from screens and obligations, not as luxuries, as biological necessities. You train stress every day, but you never train recovery, and that imbalance is costing you more than you realize. Let's move to something even more fundamental. Movement. Your body was not designed for chairs. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because we have built an entire civilization around sedentary behavior, and then act surprised when our biology starts to deteriorate. You wake up, you sit in a car, you sit at a desk, you sit at lunch, you sit in a car again, you sit on a couch, you sleep, and then you repeat it. For your endocrine system, this communicates one thing: conservation mode. When movement is absent, when the body receives no signal of physical challenge, of muscular recruitment, of cardiovascular demand, it interprets that as a world where physical intensity is unnecessary, where energy reserves should be protected, where hormonal output can be reduced to a maintenance level. Resistance training specifically is one of the most well-documented natural drivers of testosterone. Heavy compound movements, squats, deadlifts, presses, rows, the kind of training that recruits large muscle groups, elevates heart rate, creates genuine physical demand. This is not just fitness. It is endocrine stimulation, sprint work, high-intensity intervals, activities that push you past comfort and require full physical engagement. These are not optional extras for men who enjoy exercise. These are biological requirements for men who want to function at full capacity. Inactivity is not neutral. It is a signal, and the signal it sends is one of stagnation, conservation, and low demand. Your hormones respond accordingly. Move. Lift heavy things. Push your body consistently without negotiation. Now let's talk about body composition. And I want to approach this without panic, without shame, but with complete clarity about what the science actually shows. Excess body fat, specifically visceral fat, the fat stored around your organs and midsection, has a direct relationship with testosterone levels. Adipose tissue, fat cells, contain an enzyme called aromatase. Aromatase converts testosterone into estrogen. The more adipose tissue you carry, the more active this conversion process becomes. This is not about aesthetics. This is not about how you look in a mirror. This is about a measurable, documented biological process that reduces your testosterone as body fat increases. There is also the inflammatory component. Excess body fat is associated with higher levels of systemic inflammation. Chronic inflammation disrupts hormonal signaling throughout the body, including testosterone production. And then there is the metabolic dimension. Poor insulin sensitivity, which is closely linked to body composition, also correlates with lower testosterone levels. None of this means you need to be a competitive athlete. None of this is about achieving some aesthetic ideal. It is about understanding that your body composition is not cosmetic. It is functional. It directly influences your hormonal environment. The goal is not perfection. The goal is signal. What signal is your body receiving from its own composition? Stored energy signals abundance. Abundance reduces urgency, and urgency is one of the biological drivers of hormonal intensity. Train. Eat well. Reduce body fat not for vanity, but for function. Your biology will respond. Speaking of eating, let's get into diet, because this area is full of noise, full of contradictions, full of people selling systems, but stripped down to the essentials. It is not that complicated. Your endocrine system requires specific raw materials to function, and most men in the modern world are not providing them. Micronutrient deficiencies are remarkably common even among people who think they eat reasonably well. Zinc is critical for testosterone production and is depleted by chronic stress and excessive sweating. Magnesium plays a role in sleep quality and hormonal regulation, and most people are deficient. Vitamin D, technically a hormone precursor, is directly linked to testosterone levels, and the majority of people in indoor dominant cultures are chronically low. Protein intake matters, not in an obsessive way, but in a sufficient way. Protein provides the amino acid building blocks for hormones and enzymes. Chronically under-eating protein while overeating processed carbohydrates sends a nutritional signal of imbalance. Then there is the ultra-processed food pattern, the food that constitutes the majority of calories in most modern diets. High in refined sugars, industrial seed oils, artificial additives, low in nutrients, high in calories. This pattern drives insulin resistance. It drives inflammation. It displaces the micronutrients your body needs to produce hormones efficiently. Food is information. Every meal you eat sends a biochemical signal. The question is not whether you are eating enough calories. The question is what information those calories are carrying. Eat whole foods, prioritize protein, address micronutrient gaps, reduce ultra-processed consumption, not because it is morally wrong, but because it is biologically disruptive. Your endocrine system will respond to better inputs with better outputs. That is not theory. That is how the system works. Now, I want to talk about something that requires a bit more nuance. But it is important. Competition, not competition in the aggressive zero-sum dominate everyone sense, but competition in the deeper biological sense. The act of striving, of measuring yourself against a standard, an opponent, a previous version of yourself, and pushing to exceed it. Research on testosterone has repeatedly shown that competitive engagement, winning and losing in contexts that matter to you, physical training that pushes limits, skill acquisition that involves challenge and measurable progress, all of these influence the testosterone levels in ways that passive consumption does not. Your body is designed to respond to striving, to rising to meet challenges, to the process of competing for something real. When you stagnate, when you consume without producing, when you avoid difficulty, when you spend your evenings passively absorbing entertainment rather than actively building something, your biology interprets that as a low-demand environment. Low-demand environments do not require high hormonal output. This is the psychological dimension of testosterone that almost nobody talks about. It is not just about sleep and diet and exercise. It is about whether your daily life contains genuine challenge, whether you are competing for something, whether there is friction, resistance, a real opponent, even if that opponent is your own limitations, career advancement, physical improvement, skill acquisition, creative output, athletic performance, building something. These are not just life goals. They are biological inputs. Seek challenge, not comfort, not constantly, not recklessly, but consistently. Make striving a daily practice. Let's address something else now, something that lives in the overlap between neurological behavior and hormonal health. Dopamine dysregulation. The modern environment is saturated with supernormal stimuli, content designed to maximize engagement, maximize pleasure signal, maximize the neurological reward response that evolution built into us to motivate behaviors that were once difficult to access. Pornography is the clearest example, and I am not making a moral argument here. I am making a neurological one. Excessive consumption of pornographic content creates a pattern of high-intensity artificial reward that the brain's dopamine system was never designed to process at that volume and frequency. Over time, this pattern can lead to desensitization of the reward system. The baseline level of stimulation required to generate motivation, pleasure, and drive begins to rise. Real-world pursuits, which require sustained effort, delayed gratification, and tolerance of friction, begin to feel flat by comparison. Not because they are less valuable, but because the neurological contrast is too great. Motivation is partly a dopamine-driven process. Drive is partly a dopamine-driven process. And drive, motivation, and the willingness to compete and push are the behavioral upstream of the lifestyle habits that support testosterone. When artificial stimulation consistently outcompetes real-world effort in the reward system, the behavioral patterns that support hormonal health begin to erode. This is not about shame. This is about understanding your own neurology and making choices that support the life you want to build, rather than the one that's easiest to fall into. Protect your reward system. Preserve your capacity for motivation. Be selective about what you allow to stimulate you intensely and frequently. Because the quality of your drive determines the quality of your daily behavior, and your daily behavior determines your hormonal environment. Alcohol. Let's be honest about this one. The relationship between alcohol and testosterone is not complicated, but it is frequently minimized. especially in a culture where moderate to heavy drinking is normalized as social behavior. Alcohol disrupts sleep architecture. It reduces the amount of time spent in deep restorative sleep, even when it initially aids with falling asleep. As we already established, deep sleep is when the majority of testosterone production occurs. Disrupting sleep quality with regular alcohol consumption is therefore directly disrupting hormonal output. Beyond sleep, alcohol metabolism places significant metabolic strain on the liver, which plays a role in hormonal processing and balance. Chronic consumption increases cortisol levels. It affects the hypothalamic and pituitary gonadal axis, the hormonal pathway that regulates testosterone production. Excessive alcohol consumption has been clearly linked to reduced testosterone levels across multiple studies. Now, the occasional drink in a genuinely social context is unlikely to constitute a serious hormonal threat for most men. But the pattern of daily or near-daily consumption, the 3 or 4 drinks that become the wind-down ritual, the weekend behavior that bleeds into weeknight behavior, the normalized excess that most people around you also participate in, so it seems fine, that pattern compounds. It disrupts sleep. It elevates cortisol. It strains recovery. It blunts the metabolic and physical improvements that would otherwise support hormonal health. You cannot sabotage recovery consistently and expect peak performance consistently. The math does not work. Decide what you actually want, and let that decision inform your relationship with alcohol. Not guilt, not deprivation, but clarity about the real cost. Now let's zoom out, because I want you to see the full picture here, because this is where it gets important. Testosterone is not just about muscle. It is not just about sex drive. It is not just about the gym. It affects confidence. It affects risk tolerance. It affects your presence in a room. It affects the speed at which you make decisions. It affects your willingness to speak up, to lead, to take ground rather than yield it. It affects the baseline emotional energy from which you engage with your life. Low testosterone is not just a physical state. It is a behavioral state, and behavioral states are self-reinforcing. When your hormonal environment is suppressed, you are less likely to seek challenge. You are more likely to avoid risk. Your confidence erodes. Your presence weakens. Your decisions slow. Your outcomes diminish. And as outcomes diminish, your self-perception follows. And as self-perception follows, your behavior contracts further. And as behavior contracts, your hormonal environment degrades further. This is the low vitality loop. And once you are inside it, it is very difficult to identify from the inside because it becomes your baseline. You stop remembering what it felt like to operate differently. You start building an identity around the constraints of the loop. The high vitality loop runs in the opposite direction. Challenge produces adaptation. Adaptation builds confidence. Confidence drives action. Action creates outcomes. Outcomes reinforce identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior strengthens hormonal health. Hormonal health sustains energy and drive. Drive seeks challenge. Both loops are self-reinforcing. The question is which one you are currently feeding. Every decision you make today is either feeding the loop that builds you or the loop that diminishes you. Sleep or stimulation, movement or a sedentary comfort, challenge or avoidance, recovery or excess. The loops do not care about your intentions. They respond to your behavior. Here is something worth addressing directly before we move to the close. Supplements. Because someone reading this is already thinking about it, about the testosterone booster they saw advertised, about the ashwagandha stack, about the zinc and magnesium complex, about the peptides, about the TRT conversation they are considering having, and some of those things have evidence behind them. Some of them may genuinely have a supporting role in an optimized protocol. But here's what no supplement will fix: chronic sleep deprivation, sedentary lifestyle, excess body fat, unmanaged chronic stress, ultra-processed diet patterns, behavioral overstimulation, excessive alcohol consumption. Supplements amplify. They do not override. They build on a foundation. They do not create one. If your foundation is broken, you are spending money on amplifying a broken signal. The return is minimal. The disappointment is predictable, and the cycle of looking for the next external solution continues because the internal one was never addressed. The discipline stack is not complicated. It is just not easy. Sleep 7 to 9 hours, consistently, with a real sleep routine. Lift heavy things, train with intensity, recruit your muscles and challenge your cardiovascular system regularly. Eat whole foods. Hit your protein. Address micronutrient gaps. Reduce ultra-processed food patterns. Limit alcohol. Not because pleasure is wrong, but because recovery is non-negotiable. Manage stress, not by avoiding it, but by building recovery into your life as seriously as you build anything else. Compete, strive, build, produce, seek friction. Pursue something that matters to you with enough intensity that your body has a reason to be operating at full capacity. That is it. That is the stack. Not complex, just hard. And hard is exactly why most men never do it. Because hard requires you to take full ownership of your situation, to stop looking for the shortcut, to stop blaming the genes or the age or the circumstance, to look at your own daily behavior with complete honesty and ask, what signal am I sending? And one more thing before we finish, because this matters, and most people in this space skip it. Testosterone does not create meaning. It does not create connection. It does not create love or purpose or the deep sense that your life is heading somewhere worth going. What it does is support the physical and psychological energy required to pursue those things at full capacity. It supports the confidence to be present, the drive to keep building, the resilience to absorb difficulty without collapsing. The man who is optimizing his hormonal health as part of a broader pursuit of building a life he respects, that man's on a meaningful path. The man who is optimizing his hormonal health because he is trying to compensate for a lack of inner foundation, that man is chasing the wrong thing. And no amount of testosterone will fill a hole that has a different shape. Build the life. Develop the character. Cultivate the identity of a man whose daily actions are aligned with his stated values. Shifts from I want to feel better to I shifts from I want to feel better to I am the kind of man who lives this way. The habits stabilize. When habits stabilize, hormones follow. When hormones follow, energy rises. When energy rises, capacity expands. When capacity expands, the life you are building becomes more achievable. It starts with identity, not with a supplement, not with a hack, with the decision to know about who you are and what that person does every single day. So here's where we land. You can keep doing what you are doing. You can keep blaming age and genetics and stress and circumstances. You can keep searching for the product that will fix what behavior has broken. You can keep accepting the low energy, the flat drive, the muted confidence, the persistent feeling that you're operating at a fraction of your actual capacity as just the way things are. Or you can look honestly at the inputs, the sleep, the movement, the food, the stress, the alcohol, the stimulation, the competition, the recovery. You can recognize that your biology is not broken. It is responding. It is responding to the signals you are sending it every single day. And if you change the signals, the response changes. Your testosterone is not lost. It is suppressed. Suppressed by patterns that you have the ability to change, starting today, starting with the next decision you make. This is not about becoming extreme. This is not about becoming rigid or obsessive or sacrificing everything that makes life worth living. It is about becoming disciplined, about making the choices that the version of yourself you most want to become would consistently make. Choose intensity over comfort. Choose recovery over stimulation. Choose challenge over avoidance. Choose the habits that build the signal you want your body to receive, and stop doing this to yourself.